They were to wait for the invasion and then operate behind enemy lines to strike with stealth in the dead of night and wreak havoc on the occupation force.
The reason why I was asked to join was the fact that I like to do poaching, and I knew the area and I knew the woods, and I was well experienced, you see, with actually being able to recognise anyone that had moved, through an area. I could actually detect whether someone had gone that way or that way, and I could also tell whether it was an animal or a human, even if it had gone. I watched the movement of the grass, and if the grass moved at all, you didn't go. This is what you did, and this was going to be very, very useful. And I was able to recognise whether there was anyone there by the wildlife. I could tell if there was someone out there, if a bird flew out, and I knew which way the bird flew, in which direction they were moving. If you looked into a field and an animal looked at a wood, the animal was actually looking to a sound. And these are sort of things that come natural. And I thought, this is what they want me for in this unit.
I met someone in a pub who approached me and said, "You're not in the services?" And I said, "No, at the moment I'm in a reserved occupation." And he said, what would you like to do for your country in this situation? And I said, "Well, anything." He said, "Okay, will you come with me to meet someone, and you might care to join this unit with which I'm involved?" And I did that. I went to meet who was then our IO, Captain Ford, and I became a member. Mind you, I signed the Official Secrets Act before I knew what it was about.
Guy Steed asked me if I was the least bit interested in tackling the Germans if they'd come, and well, funnily, I was a little bit that way inclined anyhow, because just before the war, I'd been getting rid of I got one or two big old elm trees down here that were very difficult to get rid of. And so I had got some gelignite explosive. And I hadn't quite used it all. I suppose that was wrong of me. I shouldn't have kept it, but I did. And so I was telling, I'd got it by me, and so I was telling this Lieutenant MacNichol that I'd got this explosive, but I hoped it was all right, although it was a couple of years old, and I knew it doesn't keep indefinitely. And that if the worst came to the worst and I got the chance, I certainly would be very happy to try and blow up a German armoured car or something with it if it ever came near me. And he said, "Oh, you're the sort of chap we're looking for." And he said, "If you like to sign this paper, I'll tell you more about it." And he pulled this paper out of his pocket, and it was the Official Secrets Act. So I signed it, and when I signed it on the back, and I saw the names of all sorts of people that I knew on the back, sort of not only local farmers, but, my wife's Daphne, my wife's brother. I saw his name from over in Thanet, and Bill Gardner, and all names of quite a lot of people I knew. They'd already been signed up, as you might say. So I said, "Oh yes, rather, I'll carry on there," and so that's how it started, really.
My elder brother George was about 3.5 years older than me, and he was in it, apparently, and I kept asking him what he was up to, you see. And he said, "Well, I can't tell you," but he said, "If you're a bit interested and would join without asking questions, then I think you ought to come in, you see." And so I said, "Oh, I'd like to. If it's good enough for you, it's good enough for me, and we'll find out what you're up to then, you see." And so he came over, and Captain Hamilton Hill came over to see us, a Scotsman, very nice gentleman too. And he had a word with Father to see if he minded two of us being in this Secret Service, and Father said no, as long as they're doing good, because we were in a reserved occupation, of course. And so that he said if you were called up, you'll be sent back home again straight away, because it's so important that, you know, you won't be taken off the farm unless the Germans come, you see.
The secret network was known as the GHQ Auxiliary Units. It was an embryonic popular resistance movement designed to make Britain ungovernable by the Nazis. John Warwicker has researched their history.
Auxiliary units, the GHQ auxiliary units as they came to be known. And these were hurriedly put into effect under the direct authority of Winston Churchill, then the Prime Minister, on the 2nd of July of 1940. And the auxiliary units were quite revolutionary in that they were to be the first civilian armed unit in Europe to be placed in a position to go underground and stay behind after an invasion, before that invasion happened. It was a totally secret organisation. It was required to be secret, and secrecy was imposed upon both the people that organised it and the people that participated in this from the very word go, for very good reasons. For operational reasons, it was very important to know that nobody knew that these men were going to be behind the German lines as the Germans arrived.
Hitler was expected to strike at any moment. When the British Expeditionary Force, or BEF, was overrun in France, the evacuation of hundreds of thousands of servicemen from Dunkirk was hailed as a great triumph. It was, in reality, a catastrophic defeat. They had left behind them almost the entire armoury of the British land forces. Their ammunition, weaponry, armoured vehicles and equipment had been seized by the Germans. Britain was almost defenceless. The commander of the auxiliary units, Lieutenant Colonel Colin Gubbins, had to equip his men with whatever he could lay his hands on, as he recalled in an interview before his death in 1976.
We managed to get hold of a few revolvers. We made our own Molotov cocktails. We got the sticky bombs, and we had to beg, borrow, and see what we could get. And I even got a case of revolvers sent to me personally from the United States, which astonishingly actually arrived intact.
And did you have a headquarters?
Yes, I found a marvellous house called Coles Hill, on the borders of Wiltshire and Berkshire, which had accommodation, barns and places where we could put people up, which had big grounds where we could exercise without being seen, where we could build our grenade-throwing trenches, where we could practice our fieldcraft out in the woods and all that sort of thing, and entirely undercover. And that's where, really, we formed our headquarters.
Sabotage was their primary task. One of their weapons was a commodity so far untested in war, plastic explosive, or PE, which is highly malleable like plasticine. Lieutenant Colonel Gubbins' second-in-command, Sir Peter Wilkinson, kept an emergency hoard in his flat in Piccadilly.
I had to catch the stuff from the various sources. At that time, in 1940, the BEF had left all their arms in France, and everything was in very, very short supply. So it was a whole-time business trying to catch this material and then seeing that it was delivered to the most sensitive points and put to the best possible use. Yes, at that time, plastic explosive was a very new invention, and we were very, very much more privileged than the regular army. I used to do a lot of training by night, and I used to keep about half a pound on the balcony of my rooms in Clarges Street. I must confess, for convenience, I must confess that it was a practice which I discontinued once the Blitz started in earnest.
At Coles Hill near Swindon, the recruits were trained to infiltrate enemy bases using the cover of darkness and to eliminate the sentries on guard duty by killing them swiftly and to remain undetected, noiselessly. Don Hanscom joined the underground movement in Essex.
We were trained in thuggery and had special courses at Coles Hill.
Thuggery. Description of attacks, defences and releases. Bring knees suddenly and violently into opponent's fork. This shock, if acted upon quickly, should enable you to free your arms and then carry out any of the movements in Para 5. If wearing a steel helmet, a sudden smash in his face with a forward jerk of the head will also cause him to relax his grip.
This was rather more than unarmed combat, because in our case it meant that we had to finish our opponent off and not merely disarm him and capture him, but dispose of him. So we had some equipment. Truncheons, the cheese wire was a wire with a handle that you'd, like a cheese wire, that was used for garroting people. The way to tackle an armed man with a rifle, a revolver, to ward off dagger, stab attacks, to render a person immobile by smashing his toes or fingers so that he couldn't get away, with a rope round his neck, laying on his front, tied to his feet, so that every time he moved he throttled himself. Our main theme was to avoid trouble, because being a very small, non-confrontational unit, but of course if you ran into a guard, there was only one way to deal with him. There are some actions I remember. There's none. Is there any there? Although not so agile as I was when I was about 22, I can still remember some of the methods that I was taught to disarm or knock people down, and how to hold them down without easily, and how to stop people throttling you, which is very simple. Take a little finger, break it, break both of them.
We went 2 or 3 of us at a time from our unit, you see. And there was 3 of us went that time, and we met people from all over the country up there, you see. And we were talked to and trained by the chaps. And Lord Delamere, I think, was one of the officers. But they gave us a wonderful time, because we were sitting, officer and one of us, and officer and one of us, and when breakfast time came, we thought, army rations, but now it was bacon and eggs and toast and marmalade, it was very good. And that's how we lived up there, and that's how we lived at home. But I think it would have been different when we'd gone down underground in our bunkers.
So tell me about the training. What did you learn?
Well, one-armed combat, unarmed combat as well, we're fighting with a knife, that's all. They didn't recommend that we used our revolvers. We were issued with a revolver, but they didn't recommend that we use them. They made too much noise. So your knife was the best and quietest, you see.
What were you taught to do with a knife?
Stick it in, of course. But, if you got hold of a chap, German from behind, you got hold of his front of his tin hat, and pulled it backwards, you see, and he'd a strap under his chin, so that it lifted his head up, and it made a nice, tight place to go in with a knife, you see.
And did you really believe that you would be called upon to do this? Did you?
We were called upon to do it, but if the time had come and we'd had to done it, I don't know what would have happened. We wouldn't have had time to think. I think we would have had to done it.
Cecil Thornelly was active in Lincolnshire. He and his former colleague Eddie Welbury recall those months getting ready for the Germans.
Well, these are all the things we used during the exercises from the guerrillas.
Aren't you supposed to have given all this stuff back at the end of the war?
Well, we never did anyway.
I don't think these time pens, I think they're all gone off. So I don't think they're dangerous.
They're safe.
What's in your green box then, Eddie?
Oh, there's bits and pieces. Bullets and things that we'd used, yes. Empty shells, yes. We didn't throw much away. That's actually a little bullet. And, as I say, little bits of souvenirs.
And were you trained to blow up railway lines?
Yes,
Oh, yes, anything like that, where we to do a bit of damage.
Some improvised mines. These are all things you can easily make yourself, as the materials are easy to find. The first step is to make a burster. This can be made by filling a small cocoa tin with gelignite, 1 pound is enough, and moulding in a small knot of cortex on the end of a 2-foot length. Bring the spare end out through the lid. The next step is to make the shrapnel part of the mine. The shrapnel itself is usually small pieces of scrap metal, such as nuts and bolts, nails, etc. If you can't get these, use small, sharp stones. Pack these into a bigger tin around the burster. The more shrapnel, the better. But remember, you will have to carry the thing about. Another idea is to bury the burster in a small heap of stones. Another very good method is to use an old motorcycle cylinder filled with gelignite. The fins fly very well.
2 of them set off from Edinburgh, where the headquarters were at Blankney Hall at one time, you see. And there was a scare. They thought there was an invasion coming, you see, and 2 of them set off to blow Lincoln Station up.
Oh, they did, yeah.
But they managed to
Stop them
ring through and get them stopped somehow because, you know, it was a false alarm and they were going to flatten Lincoln Station or blow all the lines up anyway.
Mm-hmm. Which was very dangerous.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So we've got to be very careful, as you know. Explosives, funny stuff to play about with. But,
and they issued us with hand grenades 4-second time fuses instead of the ordinary 7-second ones that the ordinary army used. We were given the 4-second time so that they hadn't time to come back at you. See, if you threw it too soon and it landed, they could pick it up and throw it back. But not the 4-second one. It never came back.
And what did the local people make of what you were doing?
I don't really know.
Oh, we don't know, really.
We only thought that they thought we were shirking and,
well,
you know,
some did.
playing.
Others thought we were the Home Guard, you see. We had the Home
I
Guard
don't think
uniform
they took
on.
us seriously at all.
No.
They thought we'd got out of the Home Guard and that was it. We were playing about on Sunday morning with a few crackers and bangers and that sort of thing. And they didn't ask a lot of questions, really.
Oh, no, they didn't, no. It was wartime and
even the men on
goes.
the farm didn't seem to bother what
No,
we did, you know.
no.
We had other men, 7 or 8 men on the farm, but never questioned what we were up to, you see. But it was done when they'd gone home, of course, on a Sunday.
Secret over it. That was Mr. Churchill, wasn't it? He started it.
And he gave them instructions to give us all we wanted, you know. If there was anything we wanted, we were to have it.
Than the army itself. Everything.
Yeah, there was a lot of army officers running around without a revolver, but we'd got one usually strapped to a side, and there was a bit of jealousy, really, because...
Smith Wesson 38.
Yeah. They were nice revolvers, too.
They were, weren't they?
Yeah.
Each unit worked from a covert bunker deep in the British countryside, its location secret, its entrance or lid ingeniously camouflaged to blend in with the surroundings. The bunkers were known as operational bases, or OBs, as in this top-secret circular from the War Office.
A poor OB with a good lid is a better fighting proposition than a good OB with a poor lid. But a good OB with a good lid is best of all.
Okay.
Well, we're here now at the man rings, they call it. And this is where the OB is. It's a bit rough. Follow me.
Now, as far as I can see, there's no sign of any kind of bunker here. It's completely hidden.
Oh, of course it is, yes. Oh, it is. That was the idea of it. As I say, it's... you can't see it without till you get right on top of it.
So this is where you used to come in the dead of night, is it?
Oh, yes, it is. A bit weird.
Does it feel strange now to come back here?
Well, it does, because it looks so different. It's more grown up than when we were here. You know, I've got to find it now. Just got to think where it is. I've been down for years.
When was the last time you were here, Eddie?
Well, we did have a walk down the other month. About a month ago.
But presumably for years and years after... Oh, here we are.
Now then, Cecil. We went down here. Where did we? This is where we go down. You went, didn't you go down?
Yes, I've been down here, yes.
Didn't we come out?
Yeah. What comes out of here?
Well, we get inside.
Well, I came out the same way.
I know, I don't.
Are you going in?
Yeah.
Hey, come on, Daddy. I don't know that I should go if I were you. Can you lend me a flashlight? I'll go in if you like.
How are we going to get back out again, though?
Sure, you'll leave
You
you
could
there.
have all right.
Yeah, we shall leave you
We'll
here.
pull you out if we can't get you out.
You want me to go in?
Well, just a minute, did he?
Well, this is the entrance, but it's just a 2 foot by 2 foot concrete hole in the ground, completely hidden until you're right on top of it.
Yeah, and there was a lid on here that's opened up.
Oh,
and
there
shut
should be a lid, actually.
with grass
which
on
is
the
grassed
top.
over, yeah.
And you could still find it without any difficulty.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
It come out somewhere.
Which way does it go, Eddie? That way?
Mind the nettles there, Cecil. To your left.
Torch.
Thank you. I'd rather.
Come on.
Any foxes down here?
He's an arrow, look.
Oh, yeah.
And Eddie, any foxes down here?
I hope not. Might be a snake or two.
Anybody coming now?
Yep, I'm going to follow you. Okay, well, it's a straight drop of about 5 or 6 feet, I think. And you just have to lower yourself down carefully, and it's a rough, muddy floor at the bottom, that's it. That's okay. And then you have to crouch really low to get down, and you can probably hear that it's quite cavernous sounding inside. Okay, now you have to get down about 3 feet to get inside it. But once you're in, it's actually very roomy, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, you used to, but there's a lot of soil got in it since then.
And it's a kind of
sound, isn't it?
It's very sound still, even though it's a concrete structure.
Yeah, it's like an Anderson shelter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Similar. And that is a store place for your explosives on that end wall, look.
And you had 7 men in here. It must have been
Yes,
crowded.
It was crowded, yes. But you got in your bunk and you were out the way. And
It just take 2 bunks each side, I
Yes,
think,
I
one
think,
on top
yes.
of the other, you see.
That's right.
That's 4 of you, and then 3 there, and then your table and chairs would be in this corner.
That's right. So we managed anyway. We did.
This was luxury.
This will last a lifetime, this will.
It has done.
Well, it has, yes.
Did you have a sense of being comrades in arms? Was there that spirit
Well, we
about
must
it?
have had, yes. You know, you can't, as I say, it's a long while ago, but now we're all sort of friendly farmers together. So we got on very well.
Oh, and if you'd got in trouble, you could have backed on your friends getting you out of trouble, couldn't you? You could rely on them doing that. And, I mean, they would do anything to help.
And this was the command bunker from where the defence of this part of Britain was to take place in the event of a German invasion.
That's right, yes.
If action stations had come, we would come down here at dark and plan out from there. From here. And you would have your grenade strapped to you and your explosives strapped to you and your pockets full of Bickford and Cortex and all the rest of the gubbins, and away you went, you see.
That was it.
But you had them all fixed up before you went out, you see. You had your fuses all put in, and all they need done was put your time pencil on and stick it on something and come away again. It was a quick operation once we were among the enemy. You see, you couldn't be linger about long because they'd guards walking around, wouldn't they?
So you prepared all the
stuff in here,
yes,
everything in here.
Yes, yeah.
With the detonators on your cord and that sort of thing.
And stuck into the other, but you wouldn't put your time pencil on until the last minute.
Until the
you
last
see.
minute.
How do you feel now coming back after all these years?
Well, it's strange, it's the same queer. Nearly 60 years.
Yeah, you wouldn't be looking forward to living in here now, would you?
Wouldn't.
We used to enjoy coming down these places, didn't we? And just for one night. What we'd have done if we'd had a fortnight, I don't know.
Now the floor is all wet and muddy, and it's impossible to imagine anybody sleeping in here now because it's absolutely filthy. But at the time, it must have been much cleaner, was it?
Oh, yes, it was, yes.
It was. We kept it looking clean.
We'd have a brush and clean it out and do the job properly, didn't we?
We did.
Did a bit of housework in those days. Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, but because the soil's come in from the end there, and it's gradually got pulled this way, hasn't it? But we're a bit deeper than this, Eddie, when it started.
Oh, yes, it would be. Yes, there'll be a floor down there.
At the floor level, just about. Now, there's your carpet. Look.
Yeah, still some carpet. Well, no, me.
The front room carpet, huh?
Yes, to have a carpet all the way down here.
We'll have to have a look at Jessie's carpet when we get back.
I hope it's cleaner than that.
I knew he went off at weekends, smelt heavens high when he came home, but he never really said where he'd gone.
Jessie Welbury was a young newlywed when the war began. She preferred not to know what her husband Eddie was up to when he disappeared at weekends.
As I say, he used to smell his clothes. I used to have to hang them outside because, of course, no wonder when there was in this bunker thing, but I mean, I had no idea.
Why didn't you ask?
I don't really know. I just thought he'd gone on manoeuvres, I suppose. It's a long time ago.
The units could only approach the secret bunkers at night and did so crawling on elbows and knees, often through almost impenetrable terrain. One OB, known as the Blackadder, was located in the Scottish borders, as Major Peter Forbes recalls.
The Blackadder was this old ruin without any top. The top had gone, and it had passages running through the various cellars. And to get to it, one had to climb a bit of a cliff, get over a 10-foot waterfall, which was very difficult. When I visited it only last 2 years ago, one wonders how on earth one stepped across it. But we did. I think there was an old spike in the side of the wall which we stepped across. I remember one had to get in by night in the dark, always. We never visited these places in daylight. It was always at night. And having got over that, we walked up the course of the stream. And the patrol OB, you climbed up some rungs on the right, along a little tunnel, and there's a big chamber. And in that chamber, we actually gave 2 dinner parties for bigwigs, with salmon and drinks and really good dinner parties.
These subterranean dinner parties are also remembered by the man who supplied the main course. He says it was trout, not salmon, and he should know as he caught it, in an unorthodox way.
Captain Forbes liked trout, and we tested plastic explosives and everything before the army ever got them. But ordinary BG, blasting gelignite, you used to cut a small portion, put a detonator in and a fuse and light it, throw it into the river, and it burns below the water. It's forced it. And bang, up it went, and the trout floated belly up, and he used to go in and get the trout for Captain Forbes coming. I suppose he knew.
As well as entertaining guests, patrols had surprises in store for each other. Don Hanscom.
We were always playing pranks on other patrols, and there was a course that required you to go through a long tunnel that had been of concrete pipes in the ground, and in the dark, it was darkness. And another patrol, before our patrol, turn was to go through here and then come out and form up the other side and move on in patrol formation. They had managed somehow to get a pig in there. And of course, the leader of our patrol suddenly ran to this pig who was laying asleep in there. And it woke up. And after a lot of noise and fuss, because it was meant to be done silently, of course, everyone wondered what the hell was going on down here. And out came this pig in the face of the leader afterwards.
In training, the units were tasked with secretly infiltrating British army bases and planting blank explosives on timed detonators. Sir Peter Wilkinson remembers how the country's most senior soldier, Major General, later Field Marshal Montgomery himself, was outsmarted by the underground amateurs.
We obviously ran foul of some generals, and one of them was General Montgomery, because he was commanding in southern England, and the local patrol, commanded by Captain John Gwynn, arranged with his headquarters to have a joint exercise. And the next morning, after the exercise, General Montgomery at his morning meeting was extolling the fact that none of the auxiliary units had managed to breach his perimeter or get through to his headquarters, when there was a small explosion outside the windows of his conference room, and a little pile of earth went up in the air, which had been laid by one of the patrols, which had got right up to the borders of the house. I may say that the general hadn't got a very strong sense of humour when the joke was on him, and he was not particularly amused.
Such hijinks did not disguise the grim reality that would close in on the recruits in the event of an invasion. They knew that they would be required to fight a guerrilla war and that their chances of survival would be small.
They did. Which only last about 2 weeks, if that. Because, with them being there with dogs and that, they think they'd sooner sniffed us out if we had been doing any damage round about. And we shouldn't have lasted long. I think they're right. If they'd just put a hand grenade in our little...
Yeah, but they didn't tell us that when they recruited us.
Oh, no, they didn't they? We might have changed our minds, but
no,
still.
It was one of their thoughts that we wouldn't last 2 weeks, but they didn't tell us that.
No, probably not.
Invading Germans were not their only target. British civilians too would have to be sacrificed to protect the secrecy of the movement. Potential collaborators were identified and would have been eliminated. So too would many whose only crime was that they knew too much.
I was on guard duty. We always had to have 2 people out, 5 underneath in the hide, 2 out on guard duty, armed with live ammunition. And you had to protect that hide. No one had to know about it. This gamekeeper came along, making his way towards in the direction of the hide in this wood, and I stopped him. And we had quite an argument, and he more or less said, "You can't stop me." And then he said, "I know what there is down there. I know everything that there is down there, and all about it." So I reported this when I went down below to the sergeant. This report went through, and there was, I don't know what happened to him, or he didn't. I thought he would be, interned. We thought, you've got to get rid of him. So as he wasn't, he was still there. We decided, another group, that when the landing came, the first thing we did was to kill him.
For secrecy was all, stealth their only defence. Their ultimate responsibility was never, under any circumstances, to fall into enemy hands or to allow their comrades to be captured alive.
If anyone was caught, and you couldn't, was caught, the idea was that you had to not give information. You're going to be killed anyway, so you had to shoot yourself, if possible. Or, if you was injured and you couldn't get him back, you killed him. You could. Because I knew that me or him or anyone would have suffered tremendous torture and then have been killed. And so there's a number of ways you could do it. You could either kill him if he was unconscious, you could get him to kill himself, or you could put a booby charge on him so that if he was disturbed, you blew him up. You had not to surrender, be captured alive.
They were briefed to be utterly ruthless and to fight on against the occupying force, even in the teeth of reprisals against their own families.
Because of the history of the way that they dealt with hostages in occupied Europe, we were extremely worried about this aspect of our operation. And notwithstanding the fact that severe of terminal action would be taken against hostages, we were told to continue with our sabotage. Whether we in the units would have all been able to carry out what was expected of us in that situation is a moot question. It was, however, a very desperate situation at the time. And our Prime Minister had said it was total war. And most of us, I felt we were committed to, as we had agreed, to carry on whatever at this terrible price. Churchill said that the blood of the hostages was the seedbed of freedom.
Unknown to many of those preparing for behind-the-lines sabotage, there was a parallel network gathering and communicating intelligence. These agents used their ordinary civilian activities as a cover for spying and for monitoring troop concentrations, gun movements, military manoeuvres. Jill Monk was the teenage daughter of a village doctor in Norfolk.
I had a black horse which was to be used at night, and I went cross-country from Aylsham to the woods in Holt to leave a message during an operation. And I was grovelling around under the rhododendrons trying to find the pipe for the drop. And I heard somebody coming up the wood. And luckily I'd tied the horse well away so that he wouldn't give me away. So I lay absolutely still under the rhododendrons, hardly daring to breathe. And a man came up, because this was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and a man came along and leaned against a tree very close to me and lit up his pipe. He sounded jolly close because I could hear him breathing. And I heard the match strike to light his pipe. Anyway, I lay there terrified that I was going to sort of either cough or sneeze or get an asthma attack or something ridiculous. And eventually he finished his pipe and knocked it out against the tree, which I thought was very dangerous in case he'd set fire to the leaves. But off he went. So whether he was one of the people who was supposed to be looking out for us to capture us, which we were warned there would be during these exercises, whether he was a gamekeeper wondering whether somebody was after what few pheasants he was able to rear during the war, or what he was up to, whether he was a poacher himself, I'll never know. But I do know that once he'd gone, I nipped out from under those rhododendrons and got to my horse and rode home cross-country as fast as I could go.
The auxiliary unit's special duties, as the members of this communications network were known, were hand-picked like their patrol colleagues. Mrs. U.M. Pennell told a researcher at the Imperial War Museum of a surprise caller.
One day I went to the door, I'd just come off duty, and there was a big staff car had arrived in front of our house, and when I answered the doorbell, there was this charming young officer who asked to speak to me, asked me if I lived there, and I said, yes, that's me. And he said, is your husband in the army? And I said, yes. I said, he said, is he a chaplain in the army? And then he said, can I speak to you privately? And by then my legs were beginning to go to jelly, but I took him into the drawing room, and then he explained about what he wanted me to do.
So what did this officer explain to you specifically that you were expected to do?
Well, he said that they wanted a network of people, every 3 miles round the coast, and then 3 miles inland, who would stay put if the Germans came. I nearly had a fit, thinking how on earth I was going to explain all that to my father, because he was getting rather itchy about me having this young man coming to visit me. He thought I was perhaps getting interested in him, I don't know. But, I assured him it's nothing to do with that. And I had to make up a cock and bull story about they just wanted somebody in the village who could, if the Germans came, who could speak German. Which was so, this young man said, this network, he would tell me the names of to the east, no, wait a minute, where's I? Yes, to the east is Weyburn, and it was the schoolmaster there, of the village school. He was my contact there. And the other side was at Blakeney, there was a retired schoolmistress who I vaguely knew, and they were my contacts. And if the Germans came, I had to gather every single bit of information I possibly could. I was given leaflets with badges and uniforms and various things that I had to learn, and I used to go about. I must never leave it anywhere. I must always carry it on my person. So I used to stick it in my bra, and wherever I went, and then I had to destroy it when the Germans came.
But were there any other auxiliary unit people in Clyde?
No, I was the only one. And I don't know who went inland, but I knew they did go inland because he explained to me that there were quite a lot of doctors in this, or a few doctors anyhow, and they were ideal because they had every excuse for going about the countryside and also communicating with each other. And he said that there were two he knew within my sort of area that had a map of our area and a big X-ray of a person, and they used to superimpose this on the map, and then they would discuss some medical detail about Mrs. So-and-so, who's got something to do with her right lung or what have you, and that would perhaps be North Walsham or something like that, you see, where the Germans had arrived. You see, it was to explain exactly without mentioning the place, because they had this bit of the human body which they would speak about.
Do you remember what this captain was called?
The one that came to me, Ingram, yes.
Was his name Ingram or Ingrams?
I don't know. Ingram, I think, but I can't be sure of that.
Actually, it was Ingram's, Captain Douglas Ingram's, and he coordinated the spies who hid their secret information in everyday objects. Son, David Ingram's, still has samples of these at his family home in Devon.
Tools of the trade, where the messages were placed. One is a spike that was driven into a telephone pole, and it's hollow, and there was a plate placed with a tube on it placed into this spike. And as you may know, telephone poles have metal discs or plates with a number on them. And if this number was left upside down, then the runner would know that a message had been left in it. He'd pull out the plate, he'd take the message out of the tube, and he'd put the plate back in again with the numbers right way up. for the next time. Here's one that, again, fairly commonplace, and these were made up for my father to use, and he did the training with these for several of the local Orks Unit Special Duties groups. A Commoner Garden 5-bar gate hinge, and that, of course, would have a gate hanging from it, but on the back end, where the bolt was holding the hinge, you could pull the bolt out, and that would have a tube attached, and that would be hollowed out, and a message could go into that. And here's another, which is the tethering ring for horses, very common in the countryside, and it'd be very easy to instruct a runner to go into such and such a yard or court and just go to the backside of the tethering ring, pull out the nut, and that would have a tube attached to it, and the message would go inside that. So that's the idea. That, you know, is a sign of good luck. A horseshoe that people very often left on their houses, quite common in the countryside. Now, the piece of metal that it strikes against can be pulled out when the knocker is raised, and when you pull it out, you'll find that that too has a tube on it, and in the tube, if it was your lucky day, you found a message. The runner, the last runner, would come across from the northwesterly direction from a little hamlet called Webble Green. And he'd come up the rights of way, down the valley, up over the slope to a spot just over the hedge there. And that's where always we've had the rubbish dump. And he'd look around for where some toys had been discarded, and he'd pick up a tennis ball. Not an ordinary one. It would have a cut in it, and he could open the tennis ball up, and he'd put his message in that. Then he'd come through the gate down there, up the slope to this laurel hedge. In the laurel hedge, there was a tree stump. It was about 8 or 9 inches across, about 3 feet high, and he knew exactly what to do with that. Grasp the top, and the top would swivel open, top 6 inches, to reveal a hole just big enough for the tennis ball. He'd drop it in, close the tree trunk, and go back home.
And the tennis ball ended up in a radio room deep under the outside loo.
Now, I would have to ask you to imagine that there was a wooden toilet seat here, and it was very ordinary in the sense of outside loos, wooden, a door, a bucket, and a shelf up here with a couple of coat hooks. This one on the left would pull out and turn. You can still see the line where it was put in. And down just below the seat, there was a catch, and this was released when the coat hook was pulled. And then the entire structure had a thin false concrete floor, and the whole thing, because of the weights, could be pulled up about 4 feet high, adequate for people to just sit on the edge, put their feet across on the opposite side, and go down the ladder and get down into the corridor which led to the 2 rooms. So should we have a shot at going down there? Now, over there, you see that hook on the wall? That, again, was at the top of a shelf, and it came out and pulled down. And as you pulled it down, it released, again, another catch. But what you could do then, you probably picked up these railway sleepers, which appear to make a solid wall. And indeed, with the table up and the bench here up as well, would fit in front of these sleepers. But when that catch was pushed down, the on that far wall, you could then pull these radio sleepers up without too much trouble, actually. I'm not this moment going too far with them, but if you look in there, you will see in the bottom right-hand corner, what do you see? Should be the bottom of the pipe. In other words, where the tennis ball came out. Well, it certainly is good to be back in daylight again, and I'm sure that for most people who went down there, it was always good to be back up in daylight. I think that one really has to look at the whole spectrum of what might have happened in the event that the Germans not just landed, but began to infiltrate the country as a whole. You've got to bear in mind that the radio, the special duty people, would be underground as long as they possibly could. And of course the people in the patrols would be out there hopefully doing what they were trained to do. And there's certainly speculation that in addition to that, there would have been certain members who were trained, and they would have been members of the patrols, who had agreed that they would, to whatever extent possible, infiltrate the German military, so that whilst appearing to collaborate, they would in fact be feeding information back to the British authorities. I think it's almost inevitable that there were such people. Such is the nature of a reaction to an invasion.
So with radio operators, spies and saboteurs, any invading Germans weren't going to have an easy time. By 1944, the military tide had turned. In June that year, hundreds of thousands of Allied troops landed in Normandy. The threat of invasion, having receded, now disappeared. The secret army of the war that never was stood down. The silence surrounding them was not.
In view of the fact that your lives depended on secrecy, no public recognition will be possible. But those in the responsible positions at General Headquarters, Home Forces, know what was done, and what would have been done had you been called upon. They know it well, as is emphasized in the attached letter from the Commander-in-Chief. It will not be forgotten.
It is still the untold story of the war years, untold often privately as well as publicly, for many didn't speak of what they had done for the rest of their lives. Cecil Thornelly waited half a century before he even told his wife, Lucy.
I couldn't believe it. You know, to hear all this 50 years afterwards is incredible.
Why did he wait 50 years before he told you about it?
Because they were sworn to secrecy, and he kept his word.
Were you proud of him?
Yes, I was, very. Yes, because it must have been very frightening when they were informed that they may only live a fortnight, had it happened.
And were you still supposed to keep it a secret?
Oh, absolutely, yes. I must never tell anybody because they might need it if there was another emergency, and they might use the same situation again.
But so far, Mrs. Pennell and her colleagues have not been called back to serve. Britons are not used to fighting in their own land. The country hasn't been invaded for over 900 years, and there's been no battle on British soil since Culloden in 1746. So without the benefit of experience, would the hidden heroes really have proved a successful resistance force?
We British are not naturally conspiratorial. It would have taken us some time in Britain before we could have made a really valid contribution, I think, to a serious resistance. But in time it would have come.
According to Charlie Mason, it would have come sooner than Lieutenant Colonel Gubbins thought.
The whole existence of protecting this whole country, depending what we were going to do, not me particularly, but to stop the Germans occupying the country. I wish that I could have just been involved, and I was hoping that we'd have been used, and it was a bit of disappointment. If someone's trained to do something, then they want to do it, don't they? And when you're trained for that and you can't be used, yes, I wish they'd come. I mean, I've said this many, many times, but I wish they'd come so that we could have had a go at them.
Do you think the units have been given proper recognition for what they did and what they trained for?
Not really. Not really.
No, it's only just coming out now.
They promised us
probably a medal.
Medal of some sort, but they never came.
It was exciting. I've got to admit that I was pleased when it was over.
Hidden Heroes was presented by Alan Little and produced by Pam Rutherford and Julia Durbin, and made possible by the members of GHQ auxiliary units.